Welcome everyone. Today I have a new endgame guide for Diablo 4. As you guys can see behind me, we're looking at the speed farming Druid build with the Tornado Druid. And very thank you for CB for sharing me his build and also his replays. So right away you can see in tier 50 he was able to clear Certes Layer solo in about 3 minutes time, and that is super fast. You can see there's tons of damage and also he's very mobile. So in this video, not only are we going to look at tier 50, we're also looking to tier 100. This build is also able to clear tier 100. Maybe not as fast as the Bulwark Druid, but this build is also insanely speedy and also very fun to play. Because the build is very mobile and you get a lot of damage ticks on your screen, it feels very satisfying, and the movement speed of the werewolf is boosted with a unique chest, which is a variety when you go for the speedy build, to gaining a lot more movement speed and also lots of mobility. So what I do at the end of the video is I'll provide you guys with an entire summary of all the gears for tier 100 and also for the speedy clears. We'll go through some item variations as you go for tier 100, but if you're going for, let's say, tier 50, tier 60 gears, you can go for much speedier gears for faster clear and also for more efficiency. So make sure you guys use the timestamps for the tier 100 clear and also for the tier 50 speed run. Now, because we're looking at the endgame build for the Druid for the Tornado, we'll be focusing mostly on item choices and also on effect choices. Of course, we're looking to the legendary effects, and on the next part, we'll go through this one briefly because I have found a number of build guides for you guys to follow. And yes guys, in case you're wondering, I'm also using the same build with a little weaker items. I have tried to kill some of the monsters with, tier 100. I was a little weaker in tier 100 and there's still room for improvement, so you don't have to look at my gears. So let's have a look at CB's gears and let's have a look at, the affect choices. Now, as for the one-hit weapon, you want to go for Axis to provide you with more damage against healthy enemies. You want to look for core skill damage, vulnerability damage, and 2 sets of critical strike damage. Now I know there's also other variations that want to close damage, range damage, or poison damage, but ideally you want core, vulnerability, and also critical strike damage. Now as for the offhand, we want lucky hit chance, cooldown reduction, critical chance, maybe spirit cost reduction for the speedy runs, and also for the fortified damage reduction. So the top 3 stats are very important. The final one, you can go for poison or damage reduction with fortified. So this way you'll be a little more durable for tier 100. Now as for the rings, you want critical chance, lucky hit, vulnerability damage. After that, you can go into any form of the critical strike damage, with werewolf or with pure critical strike damage. And here similarly, you guys can see on the second ring. Make sure you can roll on the critical chance if you can, because that one is likely to get 5% with a maximum. Get high lucky hit, vulnerability, and also critical strike damage is very important to do the most damage. But if you feel yourself a little weaker, you can go for maximum HP, but ideally this build deals so much more damage, you kill enemies super fast. Now as for the amulet, you do want to have rank 2 of Envenom, which can be upgraded to rank 3 for the increase of critical strike damage. After that, any form of total armor damage reduction is really good. You also want to look for cooldown reduction if you can, maybe spirit cost reduction, maybe movement speed. So in terms of the speed farming, you want spirit cost reduction and also movement speed. In terms of tier 100, you want damage reduction, whether to close enemies when you're injured or to distance enemies, or maybe when you're fortified. So as a small example over here, you can see my particular amulet is tailored towards more defensiveness. I do not have the cooldown reduction and also the all defense is not that useful, but I do have a higher damage reduction with distance and also fortified. Now the helmet of the gear is pretty much the fixed gear with the unique item Tempest Roar. Now I'll be making another video on farming Tempest Roar and also on the two-handed crane, the Staff of Crane, because we need those built for the Bulwark and also for the Tempest. So those items, I have found one of them, I'm still looking for the second one, and once I find an effective way to farm those, I'll let you guys know. So for the Tempest Roar, you do want to have a higher lucky hit chance for more spirit gain. After that, go for critical strike damage, damage while shapeshift, and then the last 2 is not that important of course. Now in terms of the chest, there are 2 variations for this build. If you guys are going for the speed run, you can see that he is currently using the Mad Wolf to provide him with more ranks to werewolf and also a bonus to movement speed. There's also a bit of damage reduction and a bit of bonus damage, and those are not the biggest deal. You can see that I'm currently using the same build, and you can see the movement speed can roll up to about 15%. So in the form of this particular chest, it is very good if you're going for speed runs for tier 50 or tier 60 or even tier 70 to 80. But as you get to higher tiers, ideally you do want a chest that provides you with more damage reduction. You can go for 3 damage reduction and then combine with armor, or you can go with 4 damage reduction. This is not the highest roll chest, and I use this chest in a much early stage of the game. Ideally, for defensive chests, you want close damage reduction, poison reduction, fortify reduction, and maybe armor over distance reduction. Now in terms of the gloves, you want +3 or +4 upgraded to Tornado, lucky hit chance, attack speed, and also critical chance. And CB here has a really good gloves. I'll show you my gloves. They're not that good because I do not have the lucky hit chance, which is by far one of the most important stats for the gloves for the Tornado Druid. Now as for the pens, you want multiple sources of damage reduction again. Usually it's poison, fortified, and then you can go for injured, you can go for close damage reduction, or even range reduction. Now ideally, for the higher tier pushing, you want to roll into total armor. And you kind of want total armor on the chest piece and on the pens and also on the amulet. And that is quite important. Now for the case that you don't get total armor, you can do what I do. So here I have a bit of fortified, poison, and also close. The damage reduction 6.4% is not as good as armor, unfortunately, but that's the best pens I got so far. Now finally, for the boots. For a speed running build, you do want bonus movement speed. So here you can see increased movement speed and also increased movement speed after killing enemies. After that, you want werewolf form bonus armor and also more spirit cost reduction. This allows you to run super fast, have unlimited spirit, and deals a lot more damage while you kill elites. Now in terms of the hearts of choice, I'll move aside a little bit. You can see for the wealthful heart, we're going for the Barbara to deal more critical strike damage. And this is pretty much the case for more AoE damage. For the next heart, because we're dealing a lot of critical damage, we're going with a vicious heart to deal more critical strike damage and deal less not critical strike damage. And finally, we have the heart, the devious heart, that pulls enemies together when you cast your ultimate. And this is an insanely powerful heart which allows you to, get a massive boost of sucking damage and AoE damage when you cast your ultimate, which is gonna be the bursting power of this build with a Werewolf Druid. Now if you guys are looking for a build guide, I have found 3 build guides for you guys, one from Mobilitix, one from D4 Builder, and also one from Max Roll. I do not recommend going with the one from Max Roll because they are going with a perfect storm. Now if you do find yourself a little short on spirit, you can go for this one, but ideally the other 2 builds that are available, they are going with Earth and Might. So do be aware guys, if you're following the builds, make sure you go for Earth and Might. I do feel like this has more potential. And the Max Roll build, you do get a little more critical chance with Blood Hole if you follow this one, but it's not as significant as the Earth and Might with the combinations, so there's a variation. Briefly go through the skill choices because most of the builds are similar. You get more movement speed while in werewolf form, and here you do a little more damage. We'll be going with 5 rank into Tornado of course, and because we're killing a lot of monsters, you want to cast your Blood Hole very often, and because you're casting Blood Hole, you also gain damage reduction. Now there are some varieties which you can go for the Endless Tempest, which extend the duration of your Hurricane. Other times people are not going for this one, so be aware of this. Now because we will be doing a lot of critical damage and also more poison damage with werewolf spells, you really want to envenom to +3 or +6 with your amulet. And finally, we'll be getting some damage reduction and also some bonus damage. And this is the similar case for each of the build. I recommend following one of the guides from Mobilitix or maybe from D4 builders. And this will allow you to clear most of the content up to tier 60 or tier 70. And if you're pushing for tier 100, make sure you go for more defensive gears. Now because most of the paragons are very similar, I recommend going with any of the paragon that provides you with more survivability. One of the bigger highlights is actually going for more armor for this build, and this is quite important to get armor in the early stage, because you can get more armor because of the stats requirement, and this is quite important. So do be aware of this guys if you're following each of the build. They are very similar in terms of the paragon choice and also the glyph choice. So now coming over to our skill rotations, you can see that CB here, he's playing his Tornado Druid, and the moment he casts his ultimate, he will be sucking monsters towards him, and this allows him to do massive amount of AoE damage and then group them together. This also allows him to take away the suppression that reduces your range damage from, the auras. Now, while in the werewolf form, you'll be casting your defensive spells non-stop, and this provides you with a little more damage. It is a little laggy over here because of the recording, so bear in mind, guys, there is a lot of tornado. So you can reduce the quality of your game if you get too laggy because of the tornado and also the popping of the dampers. Now, while facing multiple targets, you always want to turn on your ultimate, and this allows you to suck them closer, and the Barber Gem will allow you to do massive amount of damage. Because you're very mobile, you want to keep moving, and with a Mad Wolf chest, you move even faster. So this is a very speedy build, and the biggest advantage is when you have your ultimate, you're pretty much unkillable, because you're gaining so much life, so much attack speed, and also so much more movement speed. Now, while not having your ultimate, you can still normal attack enemies because of your spirit booms. There is a 10% lucky hit chance, I believe, to reduce your ultimate spells by 2 seconds. And this is one of the reasons this build is going for lucky hit chance. So what I mean by that is this particular one, the calm before the storm. Your natural spells have a 10% chance lucky hit to reduce ultimate skills by 2 seconds. It is likely with the current the cooldown reduction, we cannot have constant Ghastly Rage. But with this particular lucky hit chance, you can reduce the procs and you can reduce the cooldowns of your ultimate as your normal attack enemies even without the ultimate on. And of course here you can see our friend pretty much have the burst ultimate almost all the time, and this is because of the lucky hit chance with most of the items. Now finally, in terms of fighting a single monster against the boss, you do want your burst ultimate on, and notice that here even without his ultimate on, he was able to do tons of damage against the boss. And with the ultimate on, the boss probably don't survive for more than 2 seconds. If you guys haven't subscribed, it is a really good time to do so, because I'll be covering tons of Diablo 4 related topics and also videos and also guides. We'll be looking to the top meta builds, non-meta builds, leveling up, and also Paragon tricks. We're also looking to the latest events and also official updates and also changes to different characters and also different builds in the game. So make sure you hit that subscribe button and also turn the notification on, because a lot of you who are watching the videos have not subscribed. You can see 80% of the viewers who are watching our videos have not subscribed, so make sure you subscribe to stay tuned for the latest update for Diablo 4. Now before we finish the video, I'll provide you guys with a multiple form of replays. First part of replay, you get to see CP gears for tier 100. There is a variation for the chest if you want to build for more defensive over the speed runs. On the second part, you got to see one of my runs with them together to farm the tier 100 dungeons, which is very effective in terms of this build. And finally, you got to see a speedy run of a tier 50 dungeon with a first person perspective. And you can see the entire run took him less than 4 minutes. So I believe it's about 3 minutes 40 seconds for him to run a tier 50 dungeon. And in case you guys are wondering, this is a very good run to be selling for boosting servers. So if he's selling for runs like this one for, let's say, 1 million gold per run and selling for 3 people, every 4 minutes he can make 3 million gold because how fast its build is. Now before you go, and if you guys didn't know, we have a new YouTube channel. And if you guys haven't subscribed, make sure you subscribe and check out the behind the scenes and also fun clips and also more stories about us. And then you get to know me a little more personally instead of just reading the news and also the games, right? So I want to share a little bit more with you guys. So make sure you check this channel out if you're interested about Matt and also Uni. She's really funny too, and she's really shy. So I want to give her a surprise and do a shout out for the new channel to get some subscribers. Thank you guys. I'll see you guys next time.